Welcome to the Chiro Business Mojo Podcast, where we deconstruct the methods, marketing, and mindset of successful business people and chiropractors from around the world. And now your host, Dr. Richard Day.
Hashtag nailed it. I am Dr. Richard Day, and this is the Chiro Business Mojo Podcast. Hello once again. I am so glad that you have taken some time out of your day to spend with me and my guest, and I hope that you learn a lot. I know I always do. My guest today is Dr. Alan Miner, who holds a Bachelor of Administration degree in Finance from New Mexico State University. He's also a graduate of Parker College in Dallas with a Bachelor of Science in Anatomy and a doctoral degree in Chiropractic. He founded Health Quest Chiropractic in 2003, and today Health Quest operates 6 offices in the Albuquerque area. He grew the original location to 1,100 weekly patient visits, something that less than 1% of the profession achieves. His awards include being voted Best of City-Chiropractor by Albuquerque the Magazine in 2012 and voted Best Alternative Wellness Company by Albuquerque the Magazine in 2013. He is host of Ounce of Prevention, a weekly radio show airing on 770 AM KKOB and 107.1 FM Calvary Connect and 107.1 FM Calvary. He's also the author of the book, The Chiropractic Code, which instructs chiropractors on how to utilize their local airwaves to educate the public about the benefits of regular chiropractic care. Hello, Dr. Miner.
Thanks for having me, Rich. Great to be on with you.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to share your story with our listeners. And I want to invite you, before we get started, feel free to jump in and fill in any of the gaps I may have missed in your bio.
I think you pretty well hit it. Maybe in the last couple of years, I've had more of a nod in serving on several boards in our community, ranging from the American Heart Association. I'm the executive director of a homeless feeding ministry here in town. And it's something I encourage all chiropractors to do, is get involved in the community. I rarely run across another chiropractor when I'm going to different legislative political meetings, when I'm at the country club, when I'm on boards. And that's where the influential people in our community are. And I want to see more chiropractors out there. But I think you pretty well hit the highlights, Rich.
Well, I'm excited to have you on today. There's a lot that you've done in the chiropractic business world that I think our listeners would benefit from hearing about. But before we get to that, take me back to the beginning for you. Why did you become a chiropractor?
I'm embarrassed to admit it was Oprah Winfrey.
Really?
Yeah, I have a finance degree. And my first career was, I always say, the blessing of a job I hated. And I just was miserable in my job. I was young. I didn't know why I hated it so much. And I was sort of trapped in life with a house, a car, a marriage. And I would get anxiety, depression, really gave me a heart for a lot of the people that come into our offices. And I was playing hooky one day and I flipped on Oprah, and back then she did these shows on purpose. And I remember watching all these different people, but I remember this black woman who her passion was purses. And I remember she, started making them in her home and selling them to her friends. And eventually she got the gall, I guess, to go out on her own in her own business. And now she was a millionaire making purses, doing what she loved. And I remember turning off that episode, and I was probably 22 at the time. And it was the first time I consciously in my life had the epiphany that, the reason I'm not happy is I'm not working in my purpose and in my passion. And so then that started me on a 2-year quest to go figure out, well, what on earth is my purpose and my passion? And I really didn't know. I didn't have any idea. But during that time frame, my mother passed away from ovarian cancer. And I had really debilitating migraine headaches, and I was about to lose my job because I was missing so many days at at work. And so a colleague referred me to a chiropractor, and what they did made sense. Dr. Dangler in New Mexico, and I've never had a migraine headache since. I still get the occasional headache, but not these, 4 medication out for 3-day kind of migraines. And maybe the idea of purpose, and then watching my mom pass on, and watching just how short life is, maybe pointed me. And then I was talking to Dr. Dangler one time, telling him about how much I hated my job and looking at my options. And he kept pressing about, you'd be a great chiropractor. Well, I have an uncle who's a chiropractor in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Ernie Gutierrez. And he was the one adult, as I reflected back, who had great stories, seemed to love what he did. And I never thought about it much, but I think I had a very positive impression about chiropractic, and kind of all those confluences came together, and the results I'd seen looking for a job change. And I realized, I could work for myself and I could help people every day. And so that is why I decided to become a chiropractor. And it really was the best decision of my life, Rich. I see a quote that they sometimes associate with Mark Twain, sometimes with Mahatma Gandhi. But the quote is, the two most important days of your life are the day you were born and the day you figure out why. And I remember that day in Dr. Dangler's office, I really figured out my purpose, and I was supposed to be a chiropractor. And I've been so in love with the profession and all aspects of it ever since.
Well, in listening to your story, there are two distinct things that I think really helped you be successful, and that is you had some work experience prior to entering the field of chiropractic, and the second one would be your background, your education in business. Anything else that you would say were the keys to your early success?
No, so many of the chiropractors we interact with maybe decided from a clinical perspective. I really did get into chiropractic from a business perspective. Again, I wanted to help people. I loved the purpose behind it, so that was important to me. But just from a sheer business perspective, I looked at a massage therapist who seemed to spend, 1 hour with a person and charge whatever it was, $40, $50, $60, $70. And I looked at different chiropractic offices and realized you could see many, many, many more people in that same time frame for about the same fee. And I thought, if I'm going to get into a service business where I want to help people, I couldn't think of another business where you had that kind of scale, whether you're, cleaning carpets or whatever other cleaning homes, other healthcare things. It's just, an adjustment didn't take long. I got that immediately. So I think my business mind gravitated that way. It just seemed like, wow, there's a niche here, that's unique. And so I think maybe doing some different sales, business, finance in my first career helped me recognize that opportunity that we have as chiropractors. We can affect a lot of people in a short amount of time.
Well, you've been very successful in a number of different business ventures related to chiropractic, so I want to kind of touch on each one of them. Let's shift forward in time and talk about what you're doing these days. Let's begin first with Health Quest Chiropractic. How many different locations do you have, and what does that practice model look like?
Sure, we've owned as many as 6. We have 4 currently today. We've really spent the last year getting our infrastructure ready to start scaling across the country. Our national brand is trademarked as Illuminate Chiropractic because there's so many Health Quests around the country. So eventually we'll switch that over in New Mexico as well. But we have 4 offices here. We run on I guess in the chiropractic world, we call it a high volume cash model. I think that's been our biggest trait and blessing, because when you charge cash, you have to build value for your service. And I early on recognized when insurance is paying, people value you about as much as they have to pay, which might be a copay. And I was also nervous about insurance. It's just never felt like a stable industry to me, like a good business plan. I don't like how one change to what they do can instantly change a practice's revenue stream. When you have people paying out of pocket, you have to do right by them. You have to earn their trust. You have to take great care of them. You have to earn great reviews. It really, to me, is a very clean and simple and honest way to practice. And so a lot of our systems and our offices are built at how do we connect with people? How do we serve them? How do we give them great care? But also in the context of today's modern world, how do we make it affordable? How do we make it timely? I always had an issue with insurance practices because I felt like, and I'm not knocking this, but I felt like there's an incentive to do more. There's an incentive to, for each modality I do, I can bill more. And they're so notorious for knocking the bill down. Maybe I should keep them in my office for an hour and do 4 or 5 things and charge more. Well, that didn't make sense from a business model. I thought, what if we can get people in and out in a few minutes, give them a great adjustment, be really clear and simplistic on what our service is, charge a fair fee, collect the full fee so we don't have to play this game of billing one thing and collecting something else, be paid immediately for what we do. It just made business sense to me. It just seemed like a very scalable, simple business model. So that's the structure and basic foundation of our offices, Rich.
So how does your pricing work? Do I walk in? Is it a la carte pricing? You can get just an adjustment for $20, and if you want e-stim, it's another 10, for example, or is it more of a membership based?
We don't do modalities. We only offer adjustments. So that simplifies what we're offering, which I found simplifies how people can talk about us and refer to us. We charge, typically our initial visit is $250, although we do tend to run online specials for $99. We run a 2-day reporting system. So day one, we'll meet with the person, do our exam, do all of our different neurological assessments. If we need to, do x-rays, although we don't do those in maybe a quarter of the time. And then clinically, that gives us time to go back and sit down and go over their file and process all the data we collected on them. Sometimes if people are really acute, we'll take care of them right away that visit. But more often than not, we have them come back and we schedule a follow-up visit with them. And we're very clear on the phone up front about how the doctors like to spend some time reviewing their findings. And so, we won't take care of them until we're ready to do so. That's helpful because if somebody's like, look, I need to get adjusted now, if we tell them up front what they expect and they're looking to come in, we don't want them to come in. There's other places that can take care of them right away. The last thing we want to do is waste somebody's time. But it also helps build value. And the bottom line is if people are paying cash for what we do, and the vast majority of people we attract are not acute. We kind of, that DC doctor of chronics is who we tend to attract, and a lot of wellness people. It's been neat to watch over the years how many people come in because they already value yoga and whole foods and organic shopping, and more people just have gone to chiropractors long term, and that kind of tends to be our tribe. And so it's really rare that people don't appreciate the way we process people. And when they come back the next visit, we sit down knee to knee with them and go over their findings, and our doctors give them a recommendation, give them an adjustment. And then from that point on, we recommend a care plan, and that really varies on our findings. Could be anywhere from a few visits to a few months of visits. People can pay a walk-in fee with us, which is $55. Or if they get on an auto draft monthly, we'll reduce our fee $10 to $45. And that's just set in the number of visits that we're seeing them. We tend to do reevaluations every 12 visits and then adjust care plans accordingly. And our goal is always, starting with the end in mind, we're here to provide lifetime family wellness care. That's our heart. I adjust my family every week. I have since everyone was born. I get adjusted once a week. I think that's how chiropractic's best utilized. It's okay if people don't. If they want to use us monthly or quarterly, great. We're here to serve however we can. But our goal and our perspective and our lens is that chiropractic stimulates the neurology of the body. It lights up the brain better than anything else. It helps take people out of a fight or flight response. It keeps joints moving, keeping people in alignment. It just makes sense. And so everything we do and how we present our services is leaning towards that. Like they're going to a gym or a CrossFit box or a yoga studio, or why they would eat organic foods. We feel we fit right in that same menu of services. So that's how we do it.
So one of the things that I think all of us strive to do is to create a wow experience for our patients/clients who come into our business. So they're getting adjusted when they come in. What else are you doing to create that wow experience?
It's all connection. It really is. I think sometimes we confuse wow with doing lots of stuff. And I think in today's world with all the digital social media, people are more disconnected from other people than ever. People are addicted to dopamine hits from their dings on text messages and likes on Instagram and Facebook. And so we've eliminated the TVs from our offices. We used to use that for education. Now we just connect. We look people in the eye. We hug them. We know their name. We talk with them. We encourage them. I cannot stand for our staff to ask people, how are you? It's the worst question ever. We try to lift people up. What's great about your day? What's the best part of your day? Hey, love the new outfit. Love the haircut. And then we build value for the adjustment. Again, the beauty of chiropractic that I perceive is in the adjustment. It's an art. It's what stimulates the neurology of the body, and it doesn't take long to do. And so a lot of our conversations are built around education about anything, talking about the different aspects of what makes up a subluxation or a fixation in the spine, talking about how an adjustment stimulates proprioception and the neurological pathways and what parts of the brain are impacted about that. And then a lot of times it's a hug. It's just, I really think we focus on being a bright light for people. We want them to look forward to coming in and just give them a very authentic, very predictable experience when they come into our offices.
Well, in preparing for this interview, I was really struck by the amount of people you are serving a day. I saw that you're serving 400 people per day compared to the chiropractic average, or the average chiropractic practice of about 75 a week. I mean, that is a huge achievement. So congratulations on that, first of all. Our listenership is made up of new docs who I'm sure want to get to that point where you are, and also docs who are maybe stuck in practice or burnt out, or they're looking for another direction. So do you have maybe a piece of advice for each of those folks on how they can really strive to get to the level that you are at today?
Well, the first thing I'll tell you, just to maybe insight, is that was actually not a great model for us. At one time, we were probably one of the highest volume practices in the Southwest, certainly in New Mexico. And unfortunately, we started to lose what I just told you made us so great. It's hard to connect with 400 people in a day, Rich. I mean, it just really is. So that's when we started opening multiple practices and basically dismantled that first large practice and said, let's just go. And also overhead got very expensive. You need a bigger space. You're paying associate doctors. And we realized, let's just go back to one doc, one staff, maybe two, and just connecting with people, giving great service. And so collectively, I guess we serve around that number today, but not in each office. And we found we raised our fees to offset that, and people were more than willing to pay it when they value what you do. And so that's one key from our evolution. But the other thing is consistency. A wise man told me there's just a lot of base hits in chiropractic. It's rare that you get the home runs. And I think every year you stay in business, you keep your doors open, you've connected with more people in the community, more people know about you, referrals go up. It's just really those first 2-3 years. We've never had one of those practices that I hear the stories where, wow, I grew this huge number in 3 months. That's never been our experience. It's a grind. It's slow and steady. It's constantly figuring out ways to get into the community. And we've done it all. We screen, we do talks, we do dinner talks, we do social media, we network, we serve on boards, we attend networking events, we meet people, we hand out cards, we cultivate an email list, we cultivate social media. I mean, we've done radio shows. We don't leave anything unturned, because at the end of the day, we have a sense of purpose that families inside of our practices are safer than the families not. We really believe that. And so we're not taking care of that many families compared to the population of our community. So I really believe a lot of people don't know about our services. They don't understand the benefits of chiropractic. They don't understand the value behind it. So until we reach that point that we just don't have any more capacity, I think we don't stop. And fortunately, our entire team has that viewpoint. We're passionate educators. We really are.
Well, speaking of teams, whether you own one practice, you'll have maybe a smaller team, or if you own a couple of locations like you and I do, you might have a few teams. Why don't you tell us about Ideal Team Consulting?
Sure. That is where I spend more and more of my time these days, helping other chiropractors build their team. And it really came out of my failures. I mentioned earlier we had 6 practices at one point. Today we have 4. And we had to close a couple practices. And I think my story is similar to some chiropractors out there who start to get some success. They build something. I began to have a measure of time freedom. I had a nice income, and I thought, boy, wouldn't it make sense to maybe open another practice? And so we did that. And from the beginning, it was just such a pain point for us. The practice didn't grow the way the first one did. The doc that was running that practice struggled, and we sent a big part of our practice base from the original practice to that practice. So then all of a sudden, this practice that was providing a nice income was now paying for the shortages of this new practice. And now this doctor, who was such an integral part of helping us grow inside of a team, was struggling developing and building this practice. And we started to realize we weren't utilizing him to his strengths. And that built resentment, and the whole thing just felt like a big mess. We took this great situation, and all of a sudden, this practice was draining money, draining time, and really maybe tarnishing our brand we'd worked so hard to build in the community. And so I realized, I have this heart to serve people and a business mind that I really love our model, and I see the benefit. I see the reaction to people getting care in our offices. How do we do this in a way that's responsible? How do we do this in a way that serves other people? And how do we do this in a way that takes good care of these doctors that come and work with us? And that is where Ideal Team Consulting was born out of. I also joined a CEO group in my town called Vistage. And one of the things I've always done, Rich, is I've tried to align myself with mentors. And it's maybe one of the secrets to my success is I get around people who know more, who are doing bigger things. And I don't hesitate to travel and to pay to learn from people who've been down a road. I don't think you have to reinvent things. And I did that at first in chiropractic, had a lot of amazing mentors, but then I realized I kind of felt like our business model was outgrowing the advice I was getting within chiropractic. So I began looking in the business world. And Vistage has been an amazing home for me, a group of CEOs. I think it's different in each community, but you need to do around $3 million a year to qualify to be in a Vistage group. And it's essentially your board of directors of CEOs that run other companies in your community. And I am the small fry in my group. There's a company in my group that does 150 million, another does 125 million. And boy, you start hearing how those people think. And Rich, they just think different than most chiropractors. And one of my early epiphanies in Vistage was a plumbing company. And I realized, the plumbing company's not using plumbers to go out and drum up business. The plumbers were out there being plumbers, and they had a marketing team that was drumming up business. And and I started to realize, people go to school to get a management degree or a hospital management degree or a marketing degree or an accounting degree or to be a salesperson. And it's just a funny thing about our profession. We're kind of expected to wear every hat in chiropractic and be great at it. And the truth is, very few chiropractors are good at doing all those things. There's really some unicorns in our profession that seem to ascend to the top, and we know who most of them are. You probably had a lot of them on your podcast. I just started to realize that's not a system to grow and scale a business on a large scale, And so I started looking around and saying, what tools are available that we could help predict who works in our system? And so the first thing I did was I started analyzing with different models, cognitive assessment testing, predictive behavioral surveys, top grading, started looking at who was on our team, who was succeeding within our offices. What were those doctors made up like? Who were our best, highest rated front desk CAs and back office CAs? And we started to analyze each position and have a respect for what kind of person really fit well in that position, Rich. And we started stealing from bigger businesses like Facebook and Google that recognized if you take somebody who's really good at something and put them in a position and build a position around that, their satisfaction is through the roof and they excel in their job. But you take somebody who's okay at something and you train them and train them and train them, and at best they might get kind of good at it, but they never are just rock stars in that area. And maybe in the classic chiropractic example is marketing. There's a lot of chiropractors. You can train them how to go out and do a screening, And they can get some people signed up, but it doesn't mean it's a strength of theirs. They don't love it. It doesn't ignite them. There are people in our profession who absolutely get fired up by doing screenings. I mean, it just makes their day. And so we started looking at, who is successful on our team. And so all these tools in Ideal Team that we use, first I started having people in my Vistage group say, hey, Alan, I've got a chief operating officer. We've just hired the third person for that role in the last year. We're not hiring the right person. Can you use your tools to come help us? And another company had a sales force, and they said, we've got these 3 people that are like our best salespeople. We love them, but these other 10 are just struggling. Can you help us understand what makes these 3 people tick so that we can replicate hiring more people like them? Had another company in my group that had merged several other companies and said, I've got all these different people from different companies, and the culture of our executive team is really odd. Can you help us come in and understand each other so our team can work together more effectively? And we do a lot of that with other management teams as well. At the same time, I'm in several different chiropractic. I have an accountability group in chiropractic I've been in for 4 years. And the docs there would say, hey, Alan, I found an associate. Can you take a look at him and help me understand if he'll be a good fit for my team and what I'm trying to build? And will he help me reach my end goals and my exit strategy? And hey, Alan, I've got a CA who's amazing. I want to find 2 more like her. Can you help me understand what makes her tick? And so about 3 years ago, that's where Ideal Team was born, as I was spending time helping people with what I just learned and cultivated with on our business, Rich. And that has now grown to where we now at Ideal Team do a lot of work outside of the chiropractic industry with construction companies, manufacturing companies, you name it, plumbing, electrical companies, service industries. A lot of tech companies utilize our services. And really, actually, to be transparent, that company does a phenomenally great job outside of chiropractic. The reason we are still in chiropractic is it's my first love and passion. And chiropractors have gotten this wrong for a long time. So we have a lot of clients all over the world that have been using us when they have somebody who they want to look at, whether it's to help them hire a CA. We do a lot of job placement. So we'll actually place the ads, do cognitive assessments to test applicants. Then the good ones that fit that model will apply a predictive behavioral algorithm test that we use. And we get so much insight into that person and what are their strengths and what are their stresses and how do they communicate and how do they lead and what motivates them and what demotivates them. And we've helped a lot of teams, really understand who's on their team and who's successful and who's not and why that is. And then the next iteration of that we just here in the last quarter of 2016, my business partner, Stephen Franson, and I just launched Chiro Matchmakers. And it's utilizing all that experience from Ideal Team. But Dr. Franson is a coach. And through my work on Ideal Team, something I often got asked, Rich, on a regular basis was, that's awesome, Doc. Do you have any docs you can refer to me? Do you have any associates that fit who you're talking about? And that's not what we do at Ideal Team. And then Stephen would be helping his clients, and they'd say, this is awesome, but do you have any docs that you could send my way? And as we compared notes, we realized there's a real niche in our industry to help people match up. And I've had this struggle, Rich, in chiropractic, there's 80 job boards. For the last year, I've been placing jobs. Most of the state associations have job boards. Most of the schools have job boards. Then there's the specific chiropractic job boards. Then there's like the monsters and those job boards. And so they're kind of like the old classified ads. So we would place ads. I have an assistant just placing ads every week all over the country. And every so often we get a response. And what was happening is the people responding they didn't have the makeup, the DNA, the blood type of the person I was looking for that we found is successful in our clinic with our style of practice. And so I realized, what if this is like dating? If I remember right, in the 80s, people would put a classified out ad and say, hey, I'm a guy and I have these interests. And if I'm interesting, respond back. Well, dating's evolved. So where now they use all these algorithms to look at how this person's made up and this person's made up, and they use that to match people with, eHarmony and Match.com. We realized, what if we could apply the technology we use at Ideal Team to hiring people? And what if we could do that in a specific niche like chiropractic? So that we helped bring associates find what their strengths, their talents, their love, how they want to practice, and match that with intelligence to an office that's looking for a person that has that skill set. And so out of that was born a Chiro Matchmaker. So we're in the process right now of filling up our database with associate doctors, and we're really the advocates for associates, Rich. I think we have to get this right to move our profession down the road. If we can start helping chiropractors to specialize, to hire specialists, to understand the days of having a chiropractor who could wear all hats are gone. That's not a way we really move our profession forward. And most of our profession are interested in being amazing clinicians. They want to take great care of people using the skills and tool sets they developed in school. They're not interested in marketing. And there's some that are only interested in marketing. And so we can help people find the roles that are built for them, connect them with those offices. And we're excited to be doing this work, Rich, because I think we can, if somebody finds a great job and they're happy, they love what they do, all of our profession benefits.
Yeah, I think, I'm excited to hear you talk about both of these because, from a small business person perspective, I can tell you I meet a lot of different chiropractors out there, and they're all, chiropractic entrepreneurs or solo practitioners / entrepreneurs, and everyone's business model is almost an afterthought. You'll meet docs who have been practicing, for example, 20 years, and their standard of doing business is, well, I've always done it this way. It's worked so far. I think it's okay. But they might be, not even getting close to their potential. They just are sort of in their comfort zone doing that. And I've always thought that our profession could benefit from saying, hey, look at what businesses do, other businesses, maybe like a huge business like Apple or Marriott. Let's apply some of those proven tactics to our idea of business and really take the profession to another level, like you say. So this idea of Ideal Team Consulting, I think it's wonderful because these are the strategies that the big companies, and I don't mean that in a bad way because right now there's kind of this anti-corporate sentiment. I'm not saying we need to corporatize things, but take the good part about how we can really build teams and quality systems and machines, put all of that in place, and then think about the potential.
It's right, Rich. I have to laugh. I mean, I always love to get on the phone with chiropractors and just to even see if I can help. And the first question I'll ask is, well, tell me what your business is doing and what are your plans? Why are you looking for an associate doctor? And it's interesting how often the owners can't really answer that. Or what I hear often is, I'd love somebody to maybe come on my team and, we're busy, so I need some help taking care of the workload, but I'd also love them to maybe help me build the practice a little more and get out in the community. And okay, all right, well, what do you want them to do in 2 to 3 years? Well, I'd like them to maybe, in 3 to 4 years, maybe spin off and open a satellite clinic for me. What's so interesting in that conversation, Rich, and I hear that repeatedly, that's literally 4 different people. The person who would be really happy working in a practice long term and not having to run it is a very different the person who would be successful going off on their own, but still under the umbrella of the other office, which is totally different than the person who really excels going out, networking, and building the practice from the outside. So there's variables we've never looked at in our profession that it's interesting. When I go into other companies, I'm not the first consultant that does this stuff. They've usually worked with a lot of other people in the past. But when we talk to chiropractors about it, they don't even really understand that this technology exists, that we can almost completely vet a person before you even interview them to know who they are, how they think, what you can expect of them in 3 months and 6 months, what their long-term goals and plans are going to be. And so it's interesting. I've just found there's so much. I've always been a person who loves business books. There's so much to learn outside of our industry from different businesses that have scaled. And so that's where I dwell, and that's where a lot of our successes come from.
Well, if I could talk about chiro matchmakers for just a minute, I really like that concept because I'll tell you what, I've interviewed and hired my fair share of associates in my time, and I'll tell you, I would guess that most chiropractors don't even know how to give a job interview as an employer. That is a skill that's usually, an HR department in a larger company. I've worked, I had a corporate life prior to becoming a chiropractor, and I had to go in and participate in panel interviews. I've been on both sides of that. And, my experience when I talk to students who go and they're having their first interview, the employer does most of the talking. They're kind of talking about their vision and how they like to do things and all that. And then they'll turn to the associate and go, does that sound good?
Rich, you just hit it. We hear that. Here's what happens. Two things. You get asked, and people use all the interview questions that they've heard in their life all the way back to their high school jobs,
Right.
Hey, what's your biggest weakness? There's these cliche questions. Or you hit on the head. It turns into like the chiropractor is literally like doing a sales pitch to this person. Like, it's really important, Rich, that we find somebody who has a strong work ethic and likes to market. Hey, do you have a strong work ethic and do you like to market? I mean, it's just, and again, though, it's back to this concept that who in chiropractic has really ever been trained to even interview people? Who's gone and studied that? And there is a complete science to that. And so just understanding how to interview and how to really drill down on who you're talking to and understanding the kind of person you're looking for puts a chiropractor light years away. Another thing I learned in myself that led me on this path is I learned that I'm a pretty crappy interviewer myself, Rich. And what happened is I was hiring people who I thought were one type of person. And so often 3-6 months later, I had a totally different person on my hands.
Yeah.
And it started going, all right, this is what happened here. And what I learned with some of this predictive behavioral technology, you can actually kind of get a peek behind the curtain, if you will, to appreciate and understand, is the person in front of me really the same person they're going to be 6 months from now? Because we have this, we all are who we are. We have this kind of natural behavioral self. But what happens is based on the stress in our life, we change that around, and that comes from financial stress, family stress, health stresses, friendship stresses, work stress, and your values. And if you have a lot of stress in any of those areas, we all have a tendency to kind of change around who we are naturally. I mean, if let's say, for example, if I'm a bit of an introvert, but I've got to put, money on the table, I'm going to figure out how to go out and talk to somebody about chiropractic today. It might not be a strength, but I can figure it out. And so what happens is if I interview that chiropractor who might have a lot of stresses because they're looking to change a job, they're in front of me, I might perceive who they are naturally combined with their stresses and pressures. It actually comes across as this very different person than who they are naturally. And we're all going to go back to who we are naturally. Stresses change over time. Finances work out. Health problems go away. Relationships change. And if you can start to look around the corner and appreciate who this person's going to be and hire into that, it's totally different insight than just having to go off of what they're presenting to you, which is always their best behavior within an interview.
Well, we've talked a lot about the successes you've had both in practice and these other businesses that you have started. Let's step away from that now and talk about something that maybe we tend to learn more from, and that is when we have an obstacle that we have to overcome. So can you share with us a challenge or a failure or something you've had in your life, and how you dealt with it and the lessons you learned?
Yeah, two come to mind. One is where I'm known in the profession in large part. It isn't a large part of what we do, but, and I'm sure you have listeners on both sides of this fence, but in New Mexico, there's been a real big push to bring in, to expand the scope of practice so that chiropractors can prescribe. And that really was interesting because it posed a threat to our business model. And yet it also presented an opportunity. And so that struggle, what I learned from that was the importance of being well connected in your community. And what I learned is by having a large practice, it ended up we've taken care of a lot of politicians, a lot of the people that make decisions in our community. And so I'm on the side of the fence that I think chiropractic is served well by not prescribing medication. I don't think there's a shortage of medication in the world, and I don't think there's a shortage of people that prescribe it. I think that there is a shortage of alternatives, and I think that our unique selling proposition as a profession is that we get you well by not adding anything into your body. And so that's just my viewpoint. I don't try to put that on anybody, but when it comes to working with legislation, we're a well-connected group, and it's because of building a successful practice. And so I would just suggest to chiropractors as business owners, it's important that you know people in your community. It's important you invite the mayors and governors and senators into your office and invite influential people in. It's easier to do than you think. I call people a lot. I spend a lot of time calling people up and just getting to know them and meeting them. That's also helped me then to go into this next one. A struggle we had this year is I have a very healthy family. All my children were born at home. We never chose to vaccinate them. None of my children ever had a medication in their body. They're athletes. We run another one of my businesses is one of the largest ballet studios in the Southwest, actually. So all three of my children dance. They're really specimens, Rich. But this summer, my wife and I were on a wine trip in Sonoma, California, and my middle daughter, Verity, we got this FaceTime picture of her having seizures. And it shook us to our core. We couldn't get home fast enough. And all of a sudden, we're thrust into this medical model we'd been fortunate to stay out of. And they started running through the battery of tests to find out, did she have a brain bleed? Did she have a tumor? Did she have a infection? And we were so thankful initially for the hospital doing all of that, because that's where medicine and technology, they were ruling things out. But what was odd is as time went on, as the days went by, she started to come out of it, and the medications they had her on wore off. And they didn't have an answer for why that happened. The only answer we had is there were some abnormal signal intensity readings on her MRI. And so, not to get off topic, but I'm a big fan of the ketogenic diet. I've done that myself. And so I knew that started with people's seizure issues. And so we left the hospital. They had my daughter on Keppra, which is an anti-seizure medication. And I said, no, let's see if we can get her into ketosis and get her off Keppra. So within 3 days, had her in full-blown ketosis, weaned her off the Keppra. And so this all happened the end of July. We're now here in December when we're recording this podcast. Thankfully, she's not had another seizure since. We've gotten 2 follow-up MRIs. The abnormal signal intensity seemed to be reducing in her brain. But it's been a trying time, Rich, because the hospital we went to locally, UNM, the University Hospital, they really thought for some reason she had a glial tumor. And they wanted to do a brain biopsy. And it just in our gut, we said, well, if she has seizures, yeah, we want to find out what's going on. But whatever's going on, is it getting worse? These seizures have been controlled. And so let's just monitor it invasively with MRI. And fortunately, the MRIs are showing she's better. But we've really been almost outcast by the neurology department there at that hospital, because how can you not do a brain biopsy? And in our minds, we're going, how could we? She's a healthy child. I just think so often for families that don't know what we know as chiropractors, that operate from such a place of fear, wouldn't have known about a ketogenic diet. And so I immediately went to some of the functional specialists in our profession that I know from the different groups I'm in, had them read all of her lab work, blood work, MRIs, and a lot of them came back and said, it's really clear to us, looks like she had a bacterial infection, and that's what the edema in her brain's from. So let's do things to help her body heal from that. And I just wonder if we would have been in the medical model and not understood what we know in chiropractic, she'd probably be on medications, anti-seizure meds, which who knows how those would have affected her neurologically. She would have had a brain biopsy, which who knows what that could have done to her brain. My point is, when you're challenged in chiropractic with a health challenge, that's an interesting one for us, because we are outliers as a profession. We're contrarians by nature. We don't look at the body in the same way. Doctors look at the body as it's flawed. We need to give you a medication that we've developed to influence your health. I think chiropractors by and large say, your body's designed to be healthy. Something's interfering with that. Let's try to address more of the cause. And I just am so thankful for our viewpoints, but it's been a challenge this year, like I'd never experienced before, to answer your question. So that's a long answer, but it's who you know. And again, that's my first answer, is building a network that has helped us politically. Also, when things go wrong, I was able to call the head of the hospital she was at, and we found, 3 other radiologists, neurologists from another hospital here in town that we know that refer to us. And I go back to it's making sure you're connected, just staying in the loops of chiropractic, listening to your podcast, Rich. I mean, you've done over 80 episodes. At some point, somebody might hear this if they have a hiring problem and know to call me, or might have heard one of the functional specialists on your podcast and know to call that person, or had a question about the philosophy and know to call that person. It's just lifting your head up and being a participant in your community, in your profession. You never know the different ways that's going to serve you when challenges come.
Well, thanks for sharing that story with us. Anything involving the health of our children is truly challenging on so many levels. And, but you're right, the power of the networks that we create for ourselves, so that we can really lean on those folks for all kinds of things. So that's a wonderful, answer to that question. Do you have any personal heroes?
Yeah, I do. I like that question. One of the first people that came to my mind are my parents, for 2 different reasons. And I had a great upbringing. I had a really comfortable middle class kind of upbringing, but my parents' lives, I think my mom passed away from ovarian cancer, and my personal belief why that happened is she was not happy in her life. Her passions, artwork, dancing, travel, design, were not my father's passions, and they were married till she passed away. But when she died, the biggest gift she gave to me was this appreciation that life is very short, and you just don't know how long you have, and don't waste it. You don't have tomorrow, so spend your time doing something you're passionate about and that you love. And I think that was that time I mentioned earlier when I transitioned careers. I wonder if she hadn't have passed away, if I wouldn't have stayed in a job that was just sort of comfortable but numb. So that was a gift from her. And my father provided, he had a traditional, he worked for the phone company and just really sacrificed to give myself and my sister the best upbringing they could. But I also watched how his insecurities held him back. And he was a highly intelligent man, but he was a very introverted person. And he played it safe. And interesting that I think some of my parents' weaknesses I recognized, and they've become my strengths. And I'm very thankful to them, and was able to openly talk to them about both of that. And as parents, they recognize that too. And they felt like, no, that's what our job is as parents, is to lift you up as our children. And I'm trying to do the same with my children now too. So that's the most obvious one. Another one that comes to mind is my beautiful wife, Wendy. We're drawn together because she has a purpose and passion for dance, and she operates the dance studio that we run. And I think her passion and purpose for dance rivals mine for chiropractic. And that really has been our special sauce. I mean, when your purpose is independent of your spouse, for us, it's built a really neat dynamic into our relationship that's been a tremendous blessing. And I think those are the first people that come to mind that are close to me. I've had a lot of mentors in chiropractic too, though, Rich. I started early on in my career with CJ Mertz, who just was like just got me thinking differently. I've always enjoyed Dr. DeMartini and his wisdom and insights over the years. And the list could go on and on. When I was in school, I got to spend time with Reggie Gold and Fred Barge and Jim Sigafus and their way of looking at what chiropractic is as a profession, how we influence the body influenced me to this day. There's a rich legacy in our profession. And more recently, people like Patrick Gentempo has been a great mentor, and his vision and how he, to our conversation earlier, really brings in other business and has a very large scale vision for what chiropractic is capable of and how hungry the world is for the uniqueness that we offer. So I've just always sought out mentors, and I've been fortunate to have a lot of great people in our profession around me as well.
Well, do you have any habits, rituals, or affirmations, things of that sort that you do on a daily basis to help motivate you and keep you clear in your purpose?
I do. I'm a big fan of that. I do think success leaves clues, and I read avidly, and something I notice in successful people is they're disciplined in how they set the rhythms of their day. And so I've done that for many years. I rise very early and always fill my head with very motivating, inspiring things, and quiet my mind and stretch my body. And I'm very disciplined in my diet. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a huge advocate of the ketogenic diet, and my week is very rhythmic. Another thing that benefited me immensely, I have to give credit to, is business finishing school with Rick Sapio. He taught me there that, you have to have rhythms, and the discipline of having a rhythmed life leads to freedom. So all of my key direct reports in our different companies, I meet with rhythmically every week. So my Monday, I know what to expect on Mondays. I know where I do my consulting calls and where I meet with clients. I know where I have my date each week, each Wednesday morning with my wife. I know when I meet with my marketing team. I know when I meet with my call center team. All of my different doctors when we meet with, and I know when I take my kids to their sports and when I have alone time with them, and I know when my workouts are scheduled at 5:30 at CrossFit. I have a very disciplined, rhythmic life, and I've found that it's helped immensely. And then the mindset part of that, I do believe on weekdays when I'm working, I listen to a lot of audiobooks. When I drive the kids to school, we have a list of affirmations we run through. And that's just a collective list that I've heard lots of different people say of things that just resonated with me over the years. So yeah, that's an interesting question, and I find that in Vistage in my CEO group, these people are all outside of chiropractic, but it's interesting how many of them are avid readers, avidly write out goals, have a vision for their life, have defined their own personal values, have values defined in each of their businesses, have affirmations, and they're just avid learners.
What's the best business advice you've ever received?
I think it's what I just shared. Set up rhythms. Your life works easier when you know what to expect. Even my adjusting hours, I still adjust 10 hours a week, are on a rhythm. So I'm a big fan of rhythm. And then I guess the obvious one that's cliche, but nothing's more important than your people, even if it's you and a CA. Boy, does that ever provide immense benefit, having great people and building a great team.
Well, Dr. Alan Miner, thank you so much for sharing some of your very valuable time with us today. I think you have delivered a lot of value for everyone listening, actionable content that they can go out tomorrow and start applying in their practices and in their lives. What's the best way for people to connect with you, find out more about Ideal Team Consulting, Chiro Matchmakers, and everything you're involved in? Sure.
I got my phone number. I don't mind if people call me direct, is 505-463-9764, 505-463-9764. You can also find phone numbers for Ideal Team is idealteam.org, and Chiro Matchmakers is chiromatchmakers.com, CHIRO matchmakers.com. And those all have different phone numbers and emails and contact ways of contacting us. So whether it's direct through my phone or through one of the other sites, either way.
Well, thank you once again for spending your time with us today. Go out and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you, Rich. Appreciate what you're doing.
Thanks for listening to the Chiro Business Mojo podcast at www.chirobusinessmojo.com.